and they're not bispecific antibodies. Remembering that bispecific is where you take the variable region of two immunoglobulins, put them together, and most commonly, one will recognize CD3 and the other will recognize the tumor cell. So if you go on the website for this drug, you'll see that they have photosensitivity listed on the website. And it is a fairly common reason for a drug holiday for patients. And as you know, when a patient is getting an anti-neoplastic drug, a drug holiday has psychological consequences, if not biological as well. Tends to be longer lasting than the other reactions one sees. In addition, you'll see that it can go through glass, showing us that it's UVA. Now, for the names of these drugs, the first one you can understand is a monoclonal antibody, has MAB at the end. The second, though, represents the linker plus the chemotherapeutic agent. And in this case, it's tesirine. And these names, I don't know, they sort of came from outer space, but nonetheless, the chemotherapeutic agents are ones you've never seen before, but they act as classical chemotherapeutic agents, so you will understand the mechanism of action. And in this case, you see that the PBD dimer is the chemotherapeutic agent. So the monoclonal antibody is going to go up against the B-cell lymphoma cell, and then it will be incorporated inside the cell. You will then cleave the linker, and then the chemotherapeutic agent acts intracellularly, and leading to cell death. Now, I thought I was clever in trying to figure out the photosensitivity, and I thought, oh, there's PABA. Well, wrong again. So what it really is that dimer. And if you look at it, it has a lot of ring structure, so it makes sense that it does interact with the UVA light. And this is a case report that you can see with that cutoff where the person was wearing shorts with you having bullous lesions, reminding you of a severe sunburn. But the plot thickens, and that's because although the patient had had multiple cycles, he then develops not just the flare and the photosensitive regions of the body, but he then says, what's wrong with my flexural forearms? Now, the flexural forearms, as far as I'm concerned, is usually a relatively sun-protected area if we look at the number of lentiginous and nevi in the extensor forearm versus the flexor. But nonetheless, what you see is this net-like arrangement of telangiectasias with obvious skip areas, and they are persistent. So I said to myself, the description was a very unusual eruption. Okay, so which of the following, I should say, is the most likely diagnosis for this man's flexural forearms? So go ahead and vote, please. Now I'll wait till we get to a good 50 or 60, okay? That's what I'm estimating. I don't know. Never been good at this part. We seem to be slowing down a little. Okay. All right. Okay. So the answer is cutaneous collagenous vasculopathy. So, okay, we'll move on here for a second, but luckily, if you're lucky, you can find somebody else who's seen it. Every time I think I've seen something new, I say, oh, no, what's the literature say? And sure enough, here you see it. And again, while we think of linear telangiectasias a lot, you can have net-like areas, you can have the skip areas. The difference between this, of course, and generalized essential telangiectasia is that when you do the biopsy, then you see those deposits of collagen 4 around the blood vessels. But clinically, it can be very difficult to pull the two apart. So that is what the patient had. And so I looked in the literature for other chemotherapeutic agents that might give this type of change, and I found gemcitabine, but I could not find a tie that binds those two agents. When the biopsy was done, they saw the deposits around the blood vessels, but they also saw these what they called bizarre spindle cells. So that was another twist and a missing piece, because that didn't make sense to me. I draw your attention to generalized essential telangiectasias, which we usually think, again, of linear lesions starting the ankles, going up the body, but you can have those net-like areas and skip areas. So, lucky me, I find this paper in JAMA Derm where people notice these flexural forearms having the same change. And the one that the loncastuximab is still on the is still commercially available. The other is not. But in their case, they would put it more towards the GET because they did not see the deposits. So I felt, okay, I'm doing okay there, but I still couldn't figure out the fibroblasts. So I put it in open evidence. And I said, why do I have a photosensitivity on the extensor and yet I have this change on the flexor? And they said, oh, because the dermis of the flexural forearm is thin. So there's still hope for us as dermatologists, okay, of knowing a little bit more than open evidence. So luckily, group 4, we don't have to worry about as dermatologists. We just did tesserine. The TCANs do cause hair loss. I don't want to minimize that, but it's a usual suspect. So for the remainder, I'm going to talk to you about vedotin and emtansine. So I alluded to this before, and that is, even though these are new names, the mechanisms of actions are ones that are well known to us with DNA linking, et cetera. So a patient says that they have CD30 positive transform mycosis fungoides, and they have increased erythema of their plaques. What's the most likely culprit? And they all end in vedotin. Okay. I think we're everybody ready? Done? I don't know. We sort of petered off here a little. Okay. And brentuximab, because it recognizes CD30. So now we have our next question, and that is, a person has TEC, toxic erythema chemotherapy. What's the most likely culprit of the vedotins? And yay, this is correct. Most people got it. Okay, so brentuximab, anything that has CD30 on it, it recognizes. And so when you have a patient who has transformed MF and has CD30 positive cells, they can have the tumor flare reaction. And they're not getting worse, they're just simply having a tumor flare reaction. Number 2, for the enfortumab vedotin, the question is, why is that, of all of the remainder of the vedotins, the worst one, the one that dermatologists will see? And that's because of Nectin-4. And just like the one that we already went over, we have the linker, we have the chemotherapeutic agent, goes inside the cell, gets cleaved, does its thing. In this case, it inhibits microtubules. But it turns out that Nectin-4, which was first designed as a chemotherapeutic agent against bladder cancer, because it's, as you can see here, very expressed in that tissue, but it's also expressed in the epidermis, and so you're getting reactions in the skin. And in addition to the usual suspects of having macular-papular, skin fragility, and TEC, you can also get SJS-TEN, but I will warn you that many of those cases of SJS-TEN are actually just TEC. Had somebody stepped back and looked at the distribution pattern, they would have realized that it was not TEN, there was not diffuse involvement of the trunk, etc. This is an example. You can see that the distribution pattern is correct for TEC, being axilla and groin. The one thing that I do draw your attention to are those unusual mitotic figures, because that's due to that microtubule disruption. The problem with TEC is it has too many names. Hand, foot, Ara-C ears, eccrine squamous syringeal metaplasia, which is a histologically correct term, but one that you would never use with a hematologist or oncologist, okay? It does not allow communication. But I hate the one at the bottom, not hate it, I strongly dislike it, because you can imagine typing that into Epic, okay. In addition, you have crossover with the eccrine hidradenitis, originally called neutrophilic, but if you're neutropenic, you may not have neutrophils. If you remember nothing, you remember the distribution pattern. Axilla, groin, elbows, knees. You get sterile bullies centrally, you get a buckshot around them. They can be purpuric if you have thrombocytopenia. And in addition, you can say to yourself, well, yes, this does remind me on that hand a little bit of erythema multiforme, SJS, but it is not, okay? And it is weeks after the chemotherapeutic agent where the person's received many antibiotics, people have forgotten about the chemotherapeutic agent, and this is what you see. But the reason you want to use this term is because on day 18, they may only have hand-foot involvement, but on day 21, they'll have axilla groin. And now you're going to have to say you have hand-foot syndrome of the axilla and groin, or you have to make up a fake diagnosis, such as cutaneous candidiasis. Enfortumab vedotin, see, they call it severe bullous flexural dermatitis. It's really tech. Now, I'm not as offended by this as I am this, because the patient is being told they have TEN, and that's bad, okay, when they really have tech. And it's toxic, so if you give the same drug, the same amount, you're going to have the same reaction. So you can dose reduce by working with original papers as well as the pharmaceutical company to see if you can reduce the dose. Now, amtansine was the second one I told you I was going to talk about. And there you see, oh, another one to learn, but you know trastuzumab, and you know it because it's called Herceptin, okay? And so this one is used for breast cancer. And you can see that you can get telangiectasias. Now, it was thought that the people who had GI bleeding on this drug actually had it because they had thrombocytopenia, but not everybody has thrombocytopenia. So like HHT, it's possible that these same telangiectasias are in the gut. And this is examples of them, and you just simply see telangiectasias. But the one thing I want you to realize is that you can make the person feel better about themselves by giving oral propranolol and having the lesions disappear, which sometimes in your cancer patients, you do treat things that otherwise might be considered cosmetic to give them a sort of a good feel about themselves. So I have shown you my antibody drug conjugates to remind you the monoclonal antibody recognizes the tumor cell. Then you have the linker plus the chemotherapeutic agent. It's cleaved inside the cell, and then you get your effect. And you can see TEC, and you can see tumor flare reaction with vedotin. You can see spider telangiectasias, other telangiectasias with amtansine, which you can respond to propranolol, hair loss with the TCANs, and then you can get photosensitivity as well as CCV and probably GET with the tesserine. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see, we're going to have Q&A after the
Okay.
two other cases. So remember, let's see, those of you who came in a little bit late, there's exits in the back, exits in the front. This is a ARS session, audience response system, so take your phones and put them on vibrate, but we're going to use them through the case presentation.